This is Food for Thought with Deborah Walker. Today on Food for Thought, I have Aisling FitzGibbon with me, aka, otherwise known in Ireland as the girl against fluoride. I think she's hardcore, mainly because she manages to stand in the streets in Ireland in a bikini, and quite frankly it's freezing in Ireland even in summer as far as I'm concerned. So she's taking legal action against the Irish government to end the policy of mandatory water fluoridation, which actually happens over there in the public water supplies. Welcome to Food for Thought, Aisling.
Hi Debbie, thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome, and I'm really excited about chatting to you today because in the UK, Public Health England are actually starting to look at fluoridating our water, so I do think your experience over there would be really valuable for my listeners to know in the UK. And let's start. Now, how did you end up being called the girl against fluoride?
Yeah, interesting story. Well, from the very beginning, I'm living in the south of Ireland and I never knew that they had fluoride in the water, and I hadn't a clue why they were putting it in. It wasn't until I had a consultation with a nutritionist in the south of England, Barbara Wren, when I was 23 at the time, and I had been suffering from depression and low energy from the age of 19. This had happened and I had ended up going to a doctor in where I'm from in Tralee, and I was diagnosed with depression and they put me on antidepressants. I always kind of knew there must be something wrong, but every time I came off medication I went back downhill and I really didn't know what to do, and I was in college at the time. So when I actually ended up going over to England and trained as an occupational therapist, and at the end of my degree I wasn't fit for any work or anything in life. I felt I'd hit a wall and I couldn't continue, so I ended up then going down having a consultation with Barbara, and she told me about the fluoride that's added to the water supply in the Republic of Ireland and how that has a negative impact on the thyroid gland because it depletes iodine, and as you know, the thyroid has one of the highest demands for iodine in the body. And then when the thyroid goes out, that has a knock-on effect on the adrenal health, which then puts you into a state of great chronic fatigue, depression. So when she told me about this, and she said it's important that you filter out the fluoride out of your water, never to consume it again, and to mineralize back with magnesium and iodine and things like that. So anyway, I followed her advice and came home, got the filter, did everything, all the went on a detox diet, and it took a while to get better, but after like 6-7 months I felt like absolutely brilliant again. So I was like, oh my god, I've been given my life back. So I ended up getting Barbara to come over to where I'm from in Tralee and Kerry, and we set up a few talks in local hotels, and again she kept bringing up the whole issue with fluoride, not just for mental health or fatigue, but just in general terms, and how it's having a very negative impact on the whole of the body. So at the end of her stay, she just said to me when we brought her back to the airport, if you do anything for Ireland, you need to get the fluoride out of the water. So I was like, oh my god, this is, I was like, okay, I'm just after recovering from like debilitating depression. I would come out of the war zone, and then it's like, not only that, but now you have to take the fluoride out. So I was, okay.
Could you take on a national project for me?
A national project, is that okay? So I was like, right. In the meantime, I really didn't have a clue of where to begin. Firstly, my mom is a school teacher in the local secondary school up the road in Tralee. So I decided to talk to a teacher who runs projects with transition year students, which over here, a transition year is like when they're like 15, 16. And they do different projects as a non-exam year. So I put it to students there and the teacher, and they were very happy to take on the project, and they called their group Would You Pay for Poison? In the meantime, I discovered there was a guy in the north of Ireland called Walter Graham, who is from America but living in the north a long time, and he was instrumental in getting the fluoride stopped in the north of Ireland. And basically what happened was there was only 2 cities in the north ever fluoridated, and then they proposed to fluoridate the whole of the north of Ireland. When he heard this, he remembered his own father when he's from New York. I'd heard, in America they were going to fluoridate, and he actually rang up the water board there and he said, isn't this the same stuff that they're putting in rat poison, like sodium fluoride? And they were like, oh, it is, yeah, but it's just at a very low dose, so it's fine. And he was like, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Anyway, this kind of sparked Walter to basically take on all the councils in the north of Ireland, and he actually went and he got all the councils. Was it 26 out of the 27 councils voted to stop having the fluoride added to the water, and he then eventually got campaigns set up and they got the fluoride out of the other 2 towns that had fluoridated originally. So I decided we contact him. So we got him to come down to us and to present with the school students to our hometown. And then we had where I'm from in Kerry, the county council voted to end it. So I was like, oh my God, this is great. You know, we haven't even been doing it that long. We're getting great progress. But then obviously we realized, oh, it's not that easy, because in the Republic of Ireland, they made it mandatory by law. So even if councils vote to stop it, they can't, because it's mandated by this law that's been in place since 1963. It's our 50th anniversary this year. So that was grand. Okay, so we ended up then going up to the government after a couple of months later, and we had the kids present then to ministers in the government, and some of them were like, oh, this is terrible, we need to put questions into the Minister for Health. But there was actually a very nice minister there, and he's not part of any political party, he's an independent. And he said, look, there's been campaigns ran for the past couple of decades, and he said they end up fizzling out because of this law that's in place. So he just said, look, the only way I see this stopping is if a court case could actually reverse that law. So I was like, okay, right, how do I do that now? So I was like, okay. And then I said it to Walter from the north, and he was like, yeah, you need to get somebody that will take this case pro bono. And I was like, okay, right. So anyway, I put out to find somebody online. Eventually did. Eventually, kind of from contacts that I built up, I eventually found like a whole legal team that are happy to take this case. But in the meantime, we had a meeting that was in 2012 with one of the solicitors, and he was like, the only way this could ever win is if you have a massive national awareness campaign, because obviously the courts are appointed. Like, the judges are appointed by the government, and they're very unlikely to side with, not against the government. So I was like, okay, it's not just as straightforward as taking this court case. We now have to build up this national awareness campaign. So prior to that, my mum and I have been traveling around the country giving talks to all different like health groups and alternative groups and, you know, anti-government groups, all you name it, we've been to it. Our car was basically falling apart, and we'd gone to so many counties we didn't even know the names of, just giving talks continuously, and we felt, oh my God, this is going nowhere. It's like we go and we give a talk and we're saying, oh, this is bad, and people are like, oh, that's terrible. They go home and nothing ever happened. So we decided, right, this is obviously the wrong approach. And my mum and I went off on a holiday, much needed, to France, and my mum was like, okay, how are we going to get anyone to listen to this? I mean, it sounds so improbable. It sounds awful. And it's like, how do we catapult it out? Because, you know, the media, it's so difficult to get any media coverage on this. So my mum was like, actually, I think you're just going to have to strip off, basically. So that's what we did. We came back from holidays and went out to the local airport, very tiny airport in Kerry Airport. It's like something out of Father Ted. And I got a knickers with a "Get the F Out, fluoride is a poison" on it, and a t-shirt saying Irish water contains toxic industrial waste, and put that on. Obviously had a jacket over me, and then I asked a group of guys would they be in a publicity picture, and they were like, oh yeah, great. So I took off my jacket, standing there in my knickers and t-shirts, and we had great fun anyway doing the pictures. I came home and I uploaded them onto Facebook, and I was unbelievable. The reaction that I got was like, people were sending me messages, like my whole inbox was like flooded. I was getting like the amount of shares and everything. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing, because I was posting about like all these scientific journals before, and like I'd be getting like 1 like or 2 likes, and now I'm standing in my knickers and a t-shirt and I'm getting people to actually talk to me. You know,
you just learned that sex sells.
Totally. And it's like, and as well, it's like, it's the culture we're living in. We're living in this kind of like celebrity culture, this entertainment society where people want fun, they're used to the X Factor, they're used to like high drama and all this kind of stuff. So we're like, oh, all right, okay, maybe we're onto something here. And then I woke up one morning, my mum was down in the sitting room and she was kind of like, oh, okay, I'm after writing this short story and it's about a girl. And she was calling it Just a Girl Against Fluoride because, you know, everyone's saying to me, who are you to be saying this to us? Are you an expert? Are you a scientist? What are you? And basically the kind of crux of the story was, no, actually, I'm just a girl and I can read and I can see that this is very wrong. You know, it was just very simple. And anyway, that concept, I was like, all right, that's really interesting because that could be the name of it. Because before that, we were coming up with a website called suethegopherfluoride.com. And I was like, no one's going to listen to that. I was like, that's too male, it's too aggressive. People are going to be like, oh, they're just fanatics or whatever. Whereas Mum had this thing, Just a Girl. And I said, oh no, I think maybe the Girl Against Fluoride would sound really catchy. So then the Girl Against Fluoride was born and we got a website up and then all the different publicity shots and stunts began. So I did a strip down to my pink underwear outside the government with a big banner saying stripped of my rights, drugged against my will with fluoride. And I suppose it's kind of just taken off from then. And it's been a whirlwind, and now it hasn't all been stripping now, but that was just to start it off. If people are listening going, my God, to get involved in a fluoride campaign, you've just stripped off, this is terrible. But I suppose it was just, what I've learned is you have to create something that's catchy, that will stand out, that's like because the Girl Against Fluoride isn't necessarily my name, you know, I'm Aisling, people don't even know my name most of the time. It's like the Girl Against Fluoride, and it's like, then it starts to spread. It's like people are saying, oh, have you heard of this Girl Against Fluoride? And not necessarily people need to know the ins and outs of the science to say, oh, it does this, it does that, because that oftentimes goes over people's heads. But whereas people are kind of hearing it, there's a Girl Against Fluoride, it is obviously, there's something up with the fluoride in the water. It's kind of getting people, it's sowing enough, it's like to have enough reasonable doubt that people are kind of saying, is this a good idea? Maybe we need to look into it. And it kind of, it's a way of engaging with people when they never would even bother to talk to you about anything, you know, because as you know yourself with the health, people are often very close-minded to it. It's only if you have a certain open mindset do people want to discuss things.
Now, this is a bigger issue than just Ireland in many respects, because the EFSA basically released proposals just recently for adequate intake of artificial fluoride salts. So you are kind of a little bit up against it, aren't you? Because, you know, even though this isn't an essential nutrient, it's being given adequate intakes, which is just astonishing. Yeah, because that's what they're trying to create this image that it is necessary, you see, and then anyone who's coming out and saying it's not almost appears completely insane. It's like, why are you saying this when they're putting it in the water to prevent tooth decay, and it's necessary? What levels are they saying that are recommended? I haven't actually seen the levels, didn't actually go into the level of the report. The reason is that if it's anything like the Public Health England report, it's so full of jargon, it's almost impossible to read. Yeah. And that's what they do. I mean, they have all their own experts saying, oh, it's safe and effective. But the whole thing is, like, I was just discussing this actually with Walter last night, because what we're trying to do here is create, you know, the court case in Ireland was taken by a woman called Gladys Ryan 50 years ago. This was before fluoride was ever introduced. She was trying to stop it, and her court case actually went on. I think it was the longest court case in constitutional law in Irish history. It went on for something like 63 days, something ridiculous. They had so many experts coming in from the for and against side, but in the end they actually sided with the expert from the promotion side, the pro-fluoride side, because his credentials were the highest compared to the other expert testimonies. But like this guy, Harold Hodge, was a toxicologist, and he then was found out, obviously he had died, but in the 90s it came out by the investigation of Christopher Bryson, who went on to write the book called The Fluoride Deception, that Harold Hodge had actually been involved in human experiments where he was injecting plutonium and uranium into hospital patients without their knowledge to find out how much the human body could take of industrial chemicals.
this individual was obviously the most prominent figure within the court case, as in the judge noted how his testimony was the most persuasive and how he felt that his information was most valid, that it was safe and effective for preventing tooth decay. What people don't realise is that behind the scenes, that it actually has nothing to do with oral health, and it has everything to do with these large industries like the aluminium industry and the fertilizer industry. It's their way of getting rid of their industrial waste chemicals, which is this fluoride, which actually has a name of hydrofluoric acid. That's the kind of full name, and it has not just fluoride, but it has things like arsenic and mercury and uranium and all these kind of heavy metals. But I mean, they'll try and convince you that black is white. But in my discussion with Walter last night, we were just saying, there is a vast amount of books on the market against fluoride by, prominent scientists and people who have dedicated their careers to studying the toxicological impacts of fluoride. And even the BBC investigative journalist Christopher Bryce in his book The Fluoride Deception. And we were saying, all these books are on the market, but like none of these authors have ever been sued for what they're claiming. And the whole thing is to kind of put across is that it is a medical controversy, even for, say, people in the UK now. I mean, they're trying to say that this is the perfect answer to preventing tooth decay. It's the most cost effective, but it's not. It's absolutely a massive gamble to take, because there is huge medical controversy. There's two sides of the fence, but in order to follow with medical ethics, you cannot, if there's any doubt, you can't go ahead with something, especially if you're going to be using the water as the delivery system, where you can never control the dose. You just can't control. You put it into the water, you put it into absolutely everything, and there's no way to quantify how much people are being exposed to. And then the whole issue is with infants and making up infant formula, like the American Dental Association and the Centre for Disease Control, which are two of the most prominent promoters of fluoride in the world. They are even saying not to use fluoridated tap water for making up babies' milk themselves. And here you have a population which is completely unaware, for the most part, that there's even fluoride in the water, and completely misinformed about feeding their infants when they will be the most at risk. And in the Lancet journal this March this year has classified fluoride as a developmental neurotoxin in the same category as lead and mercury, for obviously being damaging to the developing brain. And there you have, unsuspecting mothers feeding their infants with this milk with made up with the fluoridated tap water. So I mean, all of these things are issues that we have to basically nail down now for this court case, which I feel isn't just for Ireland. I think it's for the rest of the world, because they're going to keep pushing this no matter what. And I do think that it's retaliation from what's going on, because we're getting massive coverage over the past year and a half, especially on the fluoride issue here in the south of Ireland. So for them to then be coming out with statements like, oh, the UK are planning on doing it everywhere, it's kind of like throwing into question of, well, obviously it's safe, how could they possibly be proposing anything that would be harmful to the public?
Well, that article, piece of research in the Lancet actually states it's to control the pandemic of developmental neurotoxicity. We propose a global prevention strategy.
Yeah.
Those are strong words.
Very strong. And, even from Harvard University in 2012, they were showing that fluoride was linked with a lowering of IQ in children. I mean, these are not things to be taken lightly. And even if there is any doubt, it's like medical ethics. It's like, first, do no harm. And they can't guarantee that this isn't doing that. They have never done any safety tests. Their only focus is on the teeth. The teeth, that's all they'll focus on. They'll design their studies specifically to just look at teeth. They have never looked at the overall impact on health in Ireland now 50 years, and they've never done any toxicological tests, nothing. It seems like they are avoiding doing that, because it's like when you look, then you'll have to find, and they obviously don't want to find that information because there's huge vested interest in this. And like our Department of Health set up this Irish expert body on fluorides and health in 2004, and they're supposedly reviewing the information, but in actual fact their main role is to basically promote fluoride and to pretend to the public that there is no evidence that exists that there is any harm at the optimal level. They say the optimal level where here it used to be 1 part per million, it's now between 0.6 to 0.8 parts per million. But that's just what they're putting into the water. So within a litre of water, you're getting 0.8 parts per million. So less than a milligram per litre. But that's only in 1 litre of water. It doesn't even, they've never looked at the overall dietary intake of fluoride. So what we're doing now is we are getting a list together of all of the fluoridated products that are on the market, just to basically list them for the court case and say, look, it's in this. Because once you put it in the water, you're putting it into all the processed foods, all the drinks brewed in this country using tap water. I mean, businesses can't afford to filter their water when they're using such quantities of it. And
medications?
Medications, there's a huge amount of medications like antibiotics and Prozac and inhalers that are all fluoride based. And what else? Teflon pots that people are cooking with. Most people are using them now because they seem to be the most available on the market. They're fluoride based, so you're cooking with fluoridated water in a fluoride pot. So obviously nobody has ever known what people are taking, and there is going to be people that are very sensitive. The World Health Organization has identified Ireland as being deficient in iodine. I'm sure probably England will be the same. And fluoride and iodine, they're both halogens, and fluoride will deplete essential iodine from your body, and that's a scientific fact. I mean, not all of these things are being ignored. And then the National Research Council in America, which has been the biggest review ever in the history of this fluoride policy, in 2006 they have stated that at like 1 part per million that it actually can do harm. But the Irish government have never even mentioned this study even exists. They just seem to just whitewash over the issue. They just say, oh, no evidence shows that it has any harm. So I mean, all of these things that we need to bring to light within our court system, and I'm hoping that by doing so here that it will have a knock-on effect on England and any other country that tries to push this on their unsuspecting public. So that's where we're up to the moment. I mean, the court case, you see, we have to be very careful what strategies we take in so far as if you go down the road of trying to prove every bit of harm, it's going to be very difficult, and they're going to bring in all their top experts. They've got unlimited resources, which we won't have, to basically say that any person that we bring in is lying. So we're trying to avoid going down that road as much as we can, and basically cast enough reasonable doubt that it's not safe to proceed with this policy any further. People are already getting plenty of fluoride from fluoridated toothpaste. If they so wish, they can use that. In America, it has a poisons warning on the back of the toothpaste. If you swallow more than a pea-sized amount, contact your poison center.
Well, anything that's transported, if you transport it in this country, it actually has a skull and crossbones. It's got a HAZChem sign attached to it. Yeah, yeah, and they'll try and convince you black as white. I mean, the chemical, when it's being delivered, the hydrofluoric acid, is very, very highly corrosive, and the person putting it in has to wear like a hazmat suit because it is very toxic. But when they say, oh, it goes in the water, it magically then just becomes perfect, and this like amazing chemical, or whatever they like to call it, nutrient for teeth, when it's not at all anything to do with teeth. I mean, the dental research itself, like the Centre for Disease Control, came out and said fluoride's benefits are topical, not systemic, which was originally believed in the when they originally started fluoridating, say here in the 60s. That's what they actually thought. People had really bad tooth decay, and that's the only reason to put it in.
not to address any other issues, but just put the fluoride in the water. It will make everyone feel that the answer to their dental health needs are answered. But like data from the World Health Organization shows that in countries that never fluoridated, that the tooth decay rates were on the decline anyway at the same rate as the fluoridated countries. And what it really boils down to is proper oral hygiene and, you know, diet. I mean, people who they're trying to target, like the lower income families, who they're saying are most vulnerable to tooth decay, in most often cases they're not really drinking that much water. They're more drinking fizzy drinks, and that's the real problem. That's what's the cause of tooth decay, is this overconsumption of sugar, you know. And people are just being confused by the whole issue that it has anything to do with protecting teeth. It really doesn't. I mean, but even though these issues are very valid, they bring you down rabbit holes because they can bamboozle you with they can come up with so many different like studies that are completely industry funded, and that's what like people in government positions are listening to, because they're like, oh yeah, of course these are perfect. Why would they lie, basically? Even though I spoke actually to a dentist yesterday who's from Dublin, and he was saying like he's very against the fluoride in the water, and he was saying that if you're to get a job in the health service in Ireland, one of the first questions they'll ask you is, what's your position on water fluoridation? And you will not be hired if you go against the issue. So you have to say, oh yeah, it's very good at the optimal level, and these people are then parroting this to the public. So we're really up against a very, I suppose, one of the most covered up issues, and what has been regarded as one of the most heavily guarded policies of our time, because they seem to have it all sewn up. Like, we went and we did a protest outside the Irish Medicines Board last week, and we went in to speak to them, and they brought down some communications director or something his name was, and he was saying, you know, we said, okay, look, the fluoride isn't being licensed by the Irish Medicines Board. Why is this? Why has it not been tested and licensed by you? Because clearly it's a medicine. You're putting it in to prevent tooth decay. And he said, oh, well, that's not our view here in the Irish Medicines Board. We believe that when fluoride goes in and comes out the tap, it's then a food. So they're regarding it as a food when it comes out of the tap.
Right, from my perspective though, it's, you know, from the research that's shown, it's most obviously not a food. It has to be considered a poison. Absolutely,
yeah. I mean, there was a SHARE report, is it called the SHARE report, commissioned in the EU, and that has stated that there is no biological need for fluoride.
No. Well, that was where I was started, wasn't it, with the EFSA? They've effectively said that. You know, that it's not an essential nutrient.
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't actually have any biological need for fluoride, and that's the misconception that they're trying to confuse people by saying, oh, you know, it's actually a food stuff. It's actually a nutrient that we're putting in, like vitamin D. We're putting it into milk or whatever. You know, they're really trying their hardest to basically confuse the public and put them into a state of complete, you know, they're completely unaware of what it is. But like, it's very difficult to kind of come along now and be like, oh, it's actually it's a poison. But their whole thing is they're like listening to what the expert body and the Department of Health are saying. So we're kind of like at the moment trying to come up with the strongest case, which is the most concrete, which I think if we can manage to do this here, then it will help our neighbours in the UK. It will help everyone in America, all the places that are working to fight it. You know, we're all kind of, if one place can actually have a victory, then it has a knock-on effect on the others. Because, I mean, the thing is, for example, the rest of Europe, like 98% of Europe, they're not forcing this upon their public. You know, people can choose if they want. I mean, they say, oh, in some places they have like fluoridated salt. And maybe that's the case. Not really. It may be in small amounts of places, but at the end of the day, I mean, how can you compare water to salt? you can choose to have salt. A lot of people don't bother having salt in their diets anyway. But how can you ever say that this adding it to salt is the same as water, when water is like a basic human right? And I think that the main crux of the argument is, and I think people in England should definitely take this on, is the fact that it is completely unethical to mass medicate people, because even if they're not saying it's medicine, by their very definition of a medicine, anything that purports to prevent or treat a disease, which they're claiming that it's treating an oral health disease, so it is a medicine. And you cannot give people that without their consent and without ever being able to control the dose. It's absolutely out of control. How can you take that risk? How can you take that gamble? Even if there's only 3 studies, apparently I think there's around 4,000 studies that are indicating that it is linked to harm of all various illnesses. And to take that risk and gamble is really a really stupid thing for people to do if they're in a position of governance. Because, I mean, you could open yourself up to litigation, you can open yourself up to seriously damaging people, but at the end of the day, it's public opinion, and it's the weight of public opinion that really will sway these issues, because, as you know yourself, people within governments are swayed by the industries that are paying them. It's not in public interest, unfortunately. That's the way it is at the moment. But it's only when people become so informed that they can't get away with pulling the wool over their eyes anymore.
And it's interesting, you know, they use the argument of the tooth decay, because you do have some of the worst dental health in Europe, don't you?
In Ireland, yeah, we do. We have like figures from the World Health Organization were showing in 2012 that we had the worst dental decay rates within Western Europe. And again, you know, when they'll claim, oh, it's because we've got such high consumption of sugar, and that's the reason. But by them saying that, they're even admitting that the real reason actually is dietary habits, and not actually, like, you don't get dental decay from a lack of fluoride.
No.
It's like you don't get a headache from a lack of a headache tablet.
Yeah.
But they're just, the whole thing is, it's propaganda. It's complete and utter propaganda, what they're trying to put forward in press releases, and, you know, with their scare tactics and their expert groups they establish, and they just keep throwing it like out into the long grass all the time. And as well, they try and create it that it is like this armed wall around it, you know. From what we've found, like with the councils like voting off to end it, it's like, oh, it's in the law, so sorry, no answer, you know. Even though, like, we've had Cork has been a massive help. We've had great support from Cork. There's been a fluoride-free towns movement set up since last year, and they've been getting like major support, like from all like cross-party political support. They've had businesses that have installed reverse osmosis filters to remove the fluoride, and it really has hit national media. It got into the national papers, it was on the national radios, it was even on television, you know, went on RTE TV, which is like, how did that happen? Anyway, these things are happening, whether they like it or not. And the awareness is definitely going up and up and up. And in Ireland, they're actually proposing to have water charges next year coming out from Irish Water. So more and more people are saying, oh, I'm not paying for fluoridated water. There's no way, you know. So there is momentum building.
Good.
And with the online, like, we're so blessed to have that facility of like Facebook and Twitter and the internet, because we can you know, easily share information, and the Facebook is building up numbers. Like, we're over 20,000 followers now on the Facebook, and that's building all the time, which is like funny how, you know, you think this is such a gargantuan task to take on. It's like, remember when we started, it was like, oh my god, 2 people are liking what I just said. 2 people. And then it's like, it goes up and up, and people are sharing it. And then I even like was over in Southampton at a group in 2012, giving a presentation about the campaign and what we had to go through and what we were doing. And, you know, and it's like, it's becoming like a global effort, because it's like, we realize it's not just what we're doing in our own countries, it's actually what we're all doing together collectively is what will ultimately enable us to defeat this. Because, I mean, it's not we're in the minority, the people who are adding it to the fluoride to the water. it's not like that it's a universal thing. In most places, like most European countries wouldn't even dream of allowing it in, and that's what we need to just make clear to the judge on the case, that this isn't this isn't solid. This is on shaky grounds, and it is at the end of the day, it's a medical controversy, and how can you take that risk?
Now, can I just pick up this medical controversy part? Because on our NHS website, it actually says that it's naturally occurring.
Yeah.
Would you like to kind of put that to bed? Because there are different types of fluoride. And actually, from my perspective, the naturally occurring fluoride is far less absorbed, is my understanding. About 80% of it is excreted in comparison to the synthetic fluoride that we're actually talking about, which actually I understand is actually listed under your Poisons Act from my notes here. So, and apparently it's almost completely absorbed, the synthetic fluoride. So do you just want to explain that? Because actually people do, I think there is confusion around the fact that people are promoting it as it's naturally occurring.
Yeah, and that's why it's so confusing, because fluoride is naturally occurring in the form of calcium fluoride in the water. In Ireland, at very, very low levels, I think like less than 0.3 parts per million. But again, it's completely different because it's bonded. Fluoride bonds in nature to calcium. So it's coming in as calcium fluoride, which, as you said, is for the most part insoluble at low enough levels, because the calcium and magnesium will actually buffer the impact of fluoride, so it makes it less bioavailable. So it's like nature kind of knew to have it with calcium so that it wouldn't actually go in and be fully absorbed and have any negative impact on our biology. But then they're putting in this artificial fluoride, which is completely different in terms of the fact that it's going in, it's not bonded to anything, it doesn't have a buffering agent, it's going in as this fluoride, well, they're calling it a free-flowing fluoride ion, but it's a fluoride ion on its own, and this has been noted by science as to be much more soluble, because of the fact that it basically has no ability to not be absorbed, because there is nothing there in its place to replace calcium. So when people are drinking it, and especially if it's in areas where there's soft water, whereby there's low calcium magnesium levels, this fluoride, artificial fluoride, will be much more bioavailable to the body, absorbed and going into every cell in the body. And unfortunately, in this country, they have never bothered to look at what that impact is and what it actually is doing. Overall, they've only ever focused on teeth. So, I mean, there is evidence there independently to show that it is causing, thyroid dysfunction and it's increased rates of respiratory disease. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, the bottom line is, from the 1940s, from the American Medical Journal, they were regarding fluoride as a poison. And then, seemingly overnight, from that era to the 1950s, it then became this panacea for oral health, for preventing tooth decay. So it has been regarded as a poison, that it has the ability to inhibit enzymes in the body, which obviously are needed for all our biological functionings. And then they have done this kind of magic job on it on a PR scale, saying that it is perfectly safe, and it's like they're trying to put it in the same category as calcium fluoride, when it is completely different. And
so when was it actually introduced into your water whole scale again?
Well, it started off in 1963, but I think it took a few years for it to kind of get into the whole of the country. But that was the first year that they started the practice. Because
you've actually got quite high depression rates, haven't you? And when you look at the studies that show the damage to the brain, the IQ, the intelligence, neurobehavioural issues that are around it, the fetal brain development, that's actually a long period of time, isn't it, for that to be happening within a country? It is, yeah. And from the World Health Organization, the south of Ireland has twice the global average of neurological disease. So we're like the leaders in Alzheimer's and these kind of conditions. And as you said, the evidence is there to show that it is a neurotoxin, and
we've been putting this in the water, and these figures are obviously highly worrying to anyone's mind and have never been investigated. Like, if we do have these figures, what's going on? Why is this happening? And I was speaking to a doctor actually this week who is against the fluoride, and she put in a motion at the Irish Medical Organisation last week at their AGM to oppose fluoride, which was defeated because they side with the state side always. She was just saying like how it is with the whole she was saying that in Ireland, which is very interesting, they're not actually recording the levels of diseases, like as in they are starting with a number of them. Say Alzheimer's obviously has been recorded, motor neuron and things like this, but things like hypothyroidism, those levels are not known. So we actually don't have any we don't have any figure as such to say this many people in this country have this condition. You know, they're on medication or whatever. They haven't even bothered to register that disease in its figures. So all these things, I mean, they do these things purposely to kind of keep people unaware.
So what are the key milestones that you've achieved so far in the campaign?
Well, I suppose the first one was creating and making this brand of the Girl Against Fluoride. I think that was one of the highlights at the very beginning, because
very pink
very pink and girly, and it's like a superhero little emblem, because you have to be a super bloody hero to take this on. It's like climbing Mount Everest with 10 children on your back. That's kind of the scale of it. Aaron Brockovich style, basically.
It is, you're absolutely right.
But that, and then I suppose getting support from the Sinn Féin party last year. They put in a bill to ban fluoride, and we had an opportunity to present to the TD ministers and senators in the government, and based on that then I've gotten a massive support from a senator in there, and she's helping now at the moment, and we're going to be doing a big debate. That was that, you know, and I think that we've had great support as well from people around the country now who've taken up with their own town councils, especially in Cork. That's been a massive milestone, and that was actually from my publicity stunt outside Kerry Airport with the neighbours. I met this guy called Owen Boyden, and he's from Cork, and based on that meeting, he is the person. I met him again afterwards, like maybe a year later, and he just said to me, he was like, "Oh my God, I know what's after happening to me. You've like put a spell on me or something." He's like, "All I can think about is fluoride," and now he's running with it. He like works like off the oil rig, so when he's back, he's just working full time on the fluoride, and he's set up this fluoride-free towns, and we've got like businesses getting in the filters, and he's gotten massive coverage. That was a huge thing, and he's still running with it, and he's offered like major support to this campaign and has helped me to no end. So it's like sometimes when you put yourself out there, it's like, you know, you get other people to kind of help you, and it's like when I started off this campaign, you could never even envision what would it be like, how would it happen, how would it pan out. Like loads of people are like, "Oh, what's your game plan?" It's very difficult to actually have an exact game plan, because like, you know, yourself in your life, you can have ideas of what you want to do, but it's like the universe has different plans for you. I mean, you can be thrown off in all different directions. But as well, I think another thing was like, okay, I have to find like a legal team. How the hell am I going to do that? Somehow, like by throwing myself out there and putting that out there publicly, I eventually found one through different contacts, and that kind of came together. And putting that into place, and then having like the help from, say, Walter Graham in the north has been massive. As a mentor, as a guide, somebody that would, you know, because it's like there's so much information. This subject is so vast. You could be talking about it for the next 10 years, but it's like to be able to sell an issue to the public is really what I've learned. I think that's been a huge milestone in terms of my communication. When I'm giving presentations, if I'm speaking on radio, it's like you have to make things palatable for people, because it's like I remember watching this drama before, and it was like people will believe the thing that gives them the least amount of nightmares. So if you sell something to someone in a way that makes them recoil in horror and makes them actually want to run away from you, you're never going to get anyone on your side, and you're not going to gain momentum with an issue, because it's like, oh my God, that is just so horrific. how could I ever, it's like you kind of destabilize people's emotions. So I've kind of learned it's like you're not just dealing with an issue that you think, oh, if I just raise my flag enough people will listen to me. It's like you have to kind of like tone it down as well. It's like you have to be able to kind of say, okay, well, what people can listen to? What is it that they can take on board in their life? And how can I break it down into a way that's easy for them to listen to? So it's like the Girl Against Fluoride has become like the Mary Poppins, where it's like a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. It's like you have to make it nice and pink and just less threatening is what I've learned. It's like I have to come at it with a nice positive energy as opposed to like an angry, aggressive energy.
Yeah, you've made activism acceptable.
That's it, yeah. Because it's like before, it's like, oh, they're angry, they're outside, they're off-putting. You're never going to get any. You're not going to get. You're going to attract like a subset of the population that will love that and will be well into that and will keep that up. But for the most part, to get any bit of traction with mainstream people, you have to act in a more mainstream way, even if you're not yourself. It's like if you come across as like this kind of like aggressive activist, then people are just like, yeah, whatever. They're against everything. So that's what I've learned this, and I think I'm still learning all the time, and I'm still refining my ability to be able to put this across to people. So hopefully, I think at the end of this, when I do finally get the fluoride out of the water, I will be able to help other people and with their issues, and kind of just add to how we do create societal change, because all of these things are learning. Because it's like recently watched the DVD of the film of Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom. And it's just like, and all the different things that people have gone through history and the approaches that they've taken. And it's like, everything is different. I mean, obviously it was a different ball game altogether, but it's like with us and with this age, it's like we're in a media age. So we have to like take advantage of that. Yeah. And so the last milestone I would say is just learning to believe that you can do the impossible. when everyone else thinks that you're absolutely insane. That's the biggest achievement, I think, because it's like, oh my God, I've so stepped out of the matrix. I've really it's like my family is funny. Like one of my mom's sisters was calling my mom and I the fluoride freaks when we started it, right? They were like, oh my God, you're just like obsessed, you keep going on and on. And then we ended up doing a naked calendar for this year, and she was one of the chief bloody models in herself, and was selling it all over and telling everyone about it. Isn't this a disgrace? And and it's funny how it's like you have to start off with an issue and how you think, oh, no one's listening to me, I'm banging my head against a brick wall. But eventually it's like people their ears start to prick up. And I think truth has a way of getting out there anyway.
Yeah. How close are you to taking the government to court?
We actually have a meeting now tomorrow, and we're trying to find out like what we can do in terms of, you see, if we go down the line of this judicial review, which was done like 50 years ago, that could take like even 3 years to even get into court. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out a way of getting like an injunction filed to get it stopped. So it's kind of up in the air at the moment in terms of timelines or when it will be, but we're just kind of gathering the case at the moment, and once that's ready, we'll hopefully get that through. And we're planning then a big event in September in Dublin. We have a guest speaker coming over from New York, and we're hoping that will be very well attended. We're doing like a black tie dinner night, and we're hoping some famous musicians might step in and play a few songs for us. Because we have like support from like Christy Moore, and there's a number of Irish musicians that are very well known over here. Paddy Casey, I don't know, he probably wouldn't be well known over in England, but Christy Moore, I think Christy Moore. Yeah. So we're hoping to get him, but because we have the debate going on in the Seanad, which is the Senate, which is going to be happening in September. So hopefully it will all happen September, October, that way. But to be honest, it's very hard to predict in terms of timelines. It's just at the moment we'll see, because again, it's not just like how brilliant the court case is and how clear the case is that we can present. It's like the weight of public opinion behind that, and I suppose we're working on building that up all the time. We're doing protests, not all the time protests, but we're doing, the online stuff is building it all the time. And because everyone now is on smartphones, people are sharing it, which is great, like, in a way, because I mean, if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be getting the level of support that we're getting at the moment.
So where are you actually appearing next so that people can support you?
Where are we now? It's our next thing, because last week we went to the Irish Medicines Board, and we found out they're saying that it's a food to our faces. So we plan to go to the the Agriculture Department, and ask what's going on with this food, just to kind of get their feedback. And another thing, so that's kind of like a public thing. So. And I'll be putting that out on Facebook anyway. So if anyone wants to join in, they can come along. And if they want to join the database as well, to stay in touch with what's happening, because it just evolves. It's just evolving organically, and that's what I've learned.
Okay.
Not to do before. I'm very goal orientated, and I'm like, oh, this has to be done by this date. But it's like, to be honest, I just have to kind of roll with whatever way it's flowing, because it's very difficult to say which or whether things just happen and they happen kind of magically. Sometimes you think, how the hell did we pull this off? Because what was really kind of like, when you have these moments in your life and you just think, oh wow, this is really, I'm on the right path. When you get these moments where you just go,
yeah.
Oh. Last week outside the Irish Medicines Board, this guy came on his bike, and he just appeared, and he was like, hi, I'm Gladys Ryan's son. And Gladys Ryan was the lady who took the first court case 50 years ago, who passed away last year, age 93.
Oh.
So luckily she had a lovely long life. And I just said to him, we're so inspired by Gladys. She took on the state when no woman in 50 years ago, it was oh my God, it was so repressed here. And like, she took that on herself, and her husband were, like, I suppose, pioneers of being environmentalists. I think they were responsible for setting up, like, the Soil Association and things like that. But he was like, yeah, and my mom, he grew up in a household of going on about fluoride, and for him to just meet him, it was just like, I just felt like so happy in myself. That was actually a milestone in itself, just to be able to meet him, and for him to say that, and he was like, Gladys is really happy. She heard about the campaign and she was really happy about it, so she knew about it before she passed away. Huh. And I said, we call on her spirit. It's like, we're not just doing this, we're doing this for everyone, but like Gladys especially, to call in her spirit, because there's been so many people that have tried this. It's not like I'm making light-hearted of it now, but it's like, it is such a monumental thing. People have tried, dentists, like 15 years ago, he ran a big campaign, and people have hit this brick wall. So it's like, I feel like, and not only am I doing that just for getting it out, but it's like I'm doing it for all these people who've also tried. It's like all the people that have gone before us to attempt this.
So Aisling, how do people get in contact with you, keep track of you, and all those sorts of things? What are your contact details, or the contact details of the campaign?
Yeah, so get us on the website is thegirlagainstfluoride.com, and Facebook, The Girl Against Fluoride. Twitter is @FluorideGirl. And if you would like to stay in touch more closely with the campaign, please send your email to info@thegirlagainstfluoride.com and just say you want to join the database, and we'll add your name to our database. And that helps us connect to people and share the progress and any events that we have coming up. Because again, they come up sporadically, but when they do come up, we do rely on people coming along. Even if it just means sharing things online, that's even, depends on people. Obviously can't give as much time as they'd like to, but our power is definitely like having the social media campaign. So if you can share things on Facebook, Twitter, and just kind of get the word out, because this isn't just about the Irish campaign, it's a kind of global effort, because they're going to keep pushing. These bloody industrialists are going to keep pushing for fluoride, and they get in and they convince ministries for health, and so it's just really critical that we all kind of push for this to be known and a known fact that people will not go near it in the future. So, yeah.
Are you looking for donations via the website and things like that?
Yeah, if people would like to donate, which would be very, very appreciated, you can donate on the donate page on the website. I think you can, just go straight through to the our campaign account. And if anyone had any issues with that, they can just email us if they want to find out. Because I'm not sure, I don't think we have PayPal, where people can just pay. They can just do like a direct transfer. Or if they want, they can get our contact details, and if they want to send a check or anything.
Perfect.
But because we will be, we're trying to keep this campaign running, and we want to see it to the very end. So anything that anyone can contribute is a huge help.
Aisling, aka otherwise known as the Girl Against Fluoride, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been real fun. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Debbie.